I am assuming my screen is visible. Just give me just give
Yeah.
me a yes in the chat maybe, or yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you so much, Sheila, for confirming. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to APIs 101 Workshop with Postman, and I am Aanchal Mishra. And first of all, let me introduce myself. And I hope you all are having good time at Citro Hacks. And I am hoping you all are working on amazing projects and coming up with some of the amazing things out there. Let me just remove this one so that it will be more easy for me to navigate. Okay, I think it should be better now. Awesome. So yeah, let me introduce myself first of all. So hello everyone, I am Aanchal Mishra and I am a Postman student leader. Apart from being an undergraduate and pursuing BTech, communities have a very special place in my heart. You can find me delivering technical talks, workshops, studying. You can find me delivering technical talks, workshops, study jams, mentoring and judging at hackathons, and so the amazing things. Of course, I cannot go long and tell about all the contributions I have in my community. So what you can do is that feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn or Twitter, and you can learn more about me and my contributions. And of course, you can go ahead and, go ahead and ask your doubts, queries in case, even after the session or in case in general doubts. I'll be more than happy to do that. Okay. So now, first of all, let's start with what is the agenda for today and how we are going to, what will be the flow of the workshop. So first of all, we'll be starting on, I'll be giving you an overview of APIs, and then we'll be going through understanding that what is basically Postman. And then after that, we'll be discussing about requests and response, which are like lifeline of APIs. And then we'll be doing after that, we'll also be trying things out. We'll also be understanding, and we'll be quickly doing a quick demonstration on showing and on understanding to actually understand that what we actually learned after that, after all the theory, after all the theory which I will be covering. And yeah, after that, because I strongly feel that workshop must be like around this workshop might end after 1 hour or maybe 1.5 hours, but the learning should not stop, and that's why and learning should not be just of one day. So I'll also provide you, and I will also leave you with some of the follow-up resources which you can actually follow along, and you can actually explore your journey, and you can even get started with your journey with APIs and Postman. And yes, if time persists, I'll be more than happy to take your question and answers. Otherwise, as I told, that you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'll be more than happy to, clear your doubts over there also. Okay, so let's get started. Okay. So now, first of all, let me give you let's walk through an example and imagine that an API is a waiter at your restaurant. Okay, let's say that an API is a waiter at your favorite restaurant. Now, let's suppose that you're sitting at the table, you are sitting at the table, looking at the menu and deciding what to order. Now, the kitchen, that is your provider, right? The kitchen will be providing you the food, and that is the thing that the kitchen will be providing or fulfilling your order. Now, in this case, how the kitchen will know that what you need to order, and how how you will actually or you can say that, but how will the kitchen know that what you want to order, and how will you actually place that order in the kitchen? So the next thing which you will do is to call a waiter, right? So now what you will do, the waiter will take your order, it might and deliver it to the kitchen. The waiter will then deliver your order to the kitchen, and then it will be delivering the waiter will deliver the food back to you. Now, in this case, you are the client, okay? And you are sending your request to the server, okay? So basically, you are sending your request through the waiter, right? Who tells in the kitchen that what to make, and you can say that the waiter will come back with your food, or he or she may come back with the notice that, hey, the kitchen is out of what you have ordered, right? But regardless, the waiter serves as a mediator, or the waiter serves as a mediator. Yeah, the waiter serves as a mediator between you and the kitchen. And that's what APIs do for clients and servers. So now let's go a bit technical, and let's understand that what is basically, or let's basically understand the same thing about APIs in a bit technical manner. Now, let's suppose that we all know that billions of people use smartphones, and they use them to share photos on social media networks and a lot of things, right? Now, this would have not been possible without APIs. Why? Sharing photos using a mobile phone or, like using a mobile social networking application involves the use of different types of, different types of photo or different types of APIs, you can say. Now, I'm not sure that which is your, like, I would love to know from you all that which one is your favorite, like which one is your favorite social networking application which you like to use the most. Like, I will be really happy, if you can just, put it in the chat section that which one is your favorite application. If I will talk about mine, like mine is, I can say, like, I love LinkedIn. I love using LinkedIn. And apart from that, I cannot deny the fact that I also love using Instagram. So that is something, like, of course, I cannot deny that fact. But yeah, so I love using LinkedIn, and I can see someone saying, Arush saying YouTube. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, even I love using YouTube. But yeah, for interacting with each other, I would say that I love using LinkedIn on daily basis. I interact a lot on LinkedIn, and apart from that, I also like, yeah, Instagram is always there for interacting. So yeah. Now, let me explain you that how the whole process takes. As I told you that basically the whole process of sharing photos involves the use of different types of APIs, right? So now, first what happens is that you take a photo, right? And the social networking mobile application uses the smartphone's camera via its API, okay? And then through its particular API, it can use some, it can actually use some image library embedded in the application to invert the photos colors. Like, to invert the photos colors, you can say filters, right? You can say applying filters and making it a better version of the original photo. Now, that is where another API will be used. And then, and eventually when it, and eventually what happens is that it shares the modified version or modified photo by sending it to a server application hosted on the social networking server using a remote API, which is accessible. So what happens is, or that will be accessible via a network. Now, usually the internet, of course. So in this scenario, there are three different types of APIs which are used. One we have is, okay, yeah. One which we have is the hardware API. The second which we have is the library API. And the third one which we have is the remote API. So using these three APIs, or using these three different types of APIs, we are actually being able to successfully share, edit, and update our photos and like anything else on our social media platforms. Now, let's talk about and let's understand what is basically an API. Now, I will take a pause here and I will ask you all that what do you think is an API? So like anything, I'm not asking you for definitions like, okay, API is, like service which allows you to communicate with each other, anything else. But yeah, I would love to know from your perspective that what comes in your mind when, when I say the word API. So yes, I will take a pause and I will wait for you all to come up with anything which you feel that whatever comes in your mind when, we talk about the word API. Okay, I'm seeing the chat section. Nothing? What comes in your mind when you see the word API? Something like to get data. Awesome. Booking an airline ticket through Costco Travel. Okay, yeah, that's a daily life example, you can say. So that's also relatable. Okay, awesome. Since then, you all will be coming with different. Okay, let me read as many I can. Confusion. Okay. I'm not sure. Like you were confused about the question, or you were confused about what is basically an API. But yeah, if you are confused about what is an API, a system to interact with others. Awesome. Okay, so now let's get started. Even if you are confused on what is basically API, don't worry, I'll be covering that. So yeah, I till then, like as we continue to get the replies, but let me just get started with what is basically an API. Now, sometimes we need to get a data from a service, like you can say Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Now, since we of course don't have the access to their company's code bases, right? Like Google does not provide us their code bases, like, hey, you can just, you do whatever you want with my code. Of course, they don't do that, right? Now, what they do is that they basically create APIs. Now, what happens is that basically if they create APIs, so what happens is that basically the developers can get information from their services without the access to their code bases. And how awesome is that? So basically what happens is that both developers and the non-developers actually use APIs to get data from popular services like we have Twitter, Google, etc. to use in their own projects, right? And I think that sounds pretty awesome. Now, the wonderful thing about, how development works here is that you don't actually have to build everything from the scratch, right? You can actually use the services, or you can actually use the services which are provided from other companies, right? And because so much software nowadays are actually using APIs and basically they utilize APIs. So what happens is that we all know that they are not actually going anywhere anytime soon. So we don't have to be insecure that, hey, what will happen if once, like tomorrow or next day it will not be there. Look, so we don't actually have to worry about the same. And which is why we actually want to educate as many people as much as we can to actually understand on APIs, to actually understand the concept of APIs and how one can actually use them. So just like you can use popular APIs, you can also create your own APIs, and you can also create your own APIs for a service or application that you have made. And now coming to the most satisfying part of it, that is there's an API for everything. And when I say everything, it really means literally everything. We have APIs to thank for the sites and applications that actually provide us with best deals on hotels, travel, you can say, and of course, a lot more things, right? And APIs can actually help you access the data. You need to, of course, it can actually help you access the data you need to get your work done and do your daily task, right? Whether you are a business user, a student, or you are someone who is just using an application just for fun. But there is an API for everything to solve all your problems. Okay. And now let me explain you the concept of APIs turning into software, APIs actually turn into software into a Lego bricks. I am not now let me actually give you a quick insight on working of APIs by, by comparing it to the Lego, to the very famous Lego bricks game. I'm not sure that how many of you have played this, or how many of you have, how many of you actually have played it in your childhood maybe. But yes, I hope you must have played with Lego bricks once in a while or once in your childhood. So as you know, those plastic blocks, right, which we have, or you can say that those plastic blocks that you can actually put together to create new things, right? And what can actually happen here is that basically the possibilities are endless there. You can actually, the only limit will be your imagination, you can say. What happens is that basically APIs actually look like a software version of the Lego brick system. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? So basically when I was a child, so what I used to do is I used to play with Lego bricks for hours and hours, and creating and building cars, buildings, planes, spaceships, and whatever I wanted, right? Now, when I was bored with that, when I was bored by creating one particular creation, what I could do is I could completely destroy it, right? We can completely destroy the whole spaceship or the whole building which we made using the Lego bricks. And I could actually go ahead and start something new. Apart from that, what I could actually do is that I could actually even transform it by replacing some of the parts of the bricks, and then could make it, or could actually, turn it out to something new, right? That we could also do that. And then I could even use the put, I could actually use the put, or maybe I could actually give the put by putting the existing structures together to create a massive spaceship. Now, for example, it's the same way how the APIs work, or how the things happen in the API world. You can decompose huge systems. You can also huge systems of software bricks that can actually be or easily be assembled and even replaced thanks to APIs. But yeah, there are of course many more differences than, if I directly talk about Lego bricks. But yeah, that's how the whole scenario of APIs looks like, and that's how basically the working of API is. And you can directly compare it with the Lego bricks, with the very famous Lego bricks. So what is an API? Basically, let's do a quick recap on digest some more important points, or digest some more important information about APIs. So what do APIs do? Basically, APIs define your network. What do I mean by that? Or you can say that the information that is passed between the applications, the systems and devices, and they basically act as a mediator between the client and your server to provide, and of course to provide to provide access to data and the services and the various services which you actually want as per your need. So the complete cycle is that a client, that is your website, what happens is, or it can be a website, it can be a web app, or it can actually be a mobile application, makes requests to API endpoints on the server. Now we'll be soon discussing what is an endpoint, so you don't have to worry about that, hey, suddenly what is an endpoint now. So I'll be soon discussing that because it is also a very interesting, it is also a very important aspect of Postman as well. Now, today what we'll be doing is that today we'll be using Postman as a client, and I will be showing you all the four major tasks which you can actually live on the Postman. And of course, you can follow along with me because it will be pretty easy to follow along. And then we are going to we'll be making a request to an API to retrieve. Secondly, then we'll be adding requests, or we'll be adding data, we'll be updating data, and then we'll also learn how we can actually delete the data. So now, as I've brought the word that like Postman, so now let's talk about what is basically Postman. Basically, Postman is a collaborative API development platform that allows you to create, test, and run APIs. Okay. Now, because Postman is an industry-based tool, so what tool as well, so what you will actually come across it, that you will actually probably run across it in the workplace. And if you are confused about what that thing means, like what is collaborative API development and like what I'm actually talking about, so don't worry, as I already told, that I'm actually going to give you a quick walkthrough on how to use Postman and how to actually make your API request over there. So you will see what it is all about. Now, before moving on, let me just show you a small, let me just show you the working of APIs before and now once the Postman actually came on the screen. So now if you will see on the left hand side, okay, so basically if I will talk about the left hand side, I am not sure if you can actually see this picture, but which is actually written in the curl command line, okay, and that's how APIs were used back then. Now I'm not sure about you all, but I definitely find it really difficult to forget about getting some information out of it, but I really find it difficult to even understand that, hey, like, fetching out at what is basically written here. At the same time, if you will talk about the right hand side, that is basically, it is Postman does the same thing, but here if you will see, the UI is really, really simple. And moreover, most of the tasks which can actually be done on Postman is just a click of button. That means what happens is, with the case of, or with, in order, like, of course, UI, the very simple UI is a cherry on top, but of course, most of the things which can actually be done on Postman are basically using a click of button. That means it actually makes your work more sorted. And here also, if you will see the code as well, like here, everything is written on the screen. So what I used to happen in the curl command line, I'm not sure like how many of you have come across the same, but even I did not. So yeah, you don't actually have to you don't actually have to learn everything about curl command line, just to prove that you are an API enthusiast. But if you will come across that, everything used to actually be written on the screen. But here, if you will see, we have different versions of the code which are available here. What makes it there, like we have pretty version, we have raw version, which can actually let us decide that in which version we actually want to see the content, in which version we actually want to see the body of the data, right, and the body of the request which we are sending. Okay, I hope everyone is with me till here. So now let's talk about requests and responses. Now that we have talked about what is an API, now let's talk about requesting and receiving data with one. Now, if I will talk about, let's say that basically an API response, okay, an API response consists of a body, a header, and a status code. I'll be talking about all of these like in a while. So don't worry about that. If you're not, if you're not sure of any of these, it's totally fine. I'll be discussing about them in a while. Now, what you can do is that in Postman, you can actually make API requests and examine the responses without using a terminal or writing any code. How cool is that, right? So when you actually create a request and click on the send button, the API response appears inside the Postman user interface. And that's how the things actually happen. I'll be also showing you a quick demonstration on, I'll take the example of google.com to show you that how Google works as an API. So we also be like understanding that. So, but yeah, once I complete with the theory part, because it is as important as understanding and going through the live demonstration. So I'll do that as soon as possible once I'm done with this one. Now let's talk about making request and how one can actually interact with API. So basically, if I'll talk about request, basically requests are how we communicate with the API. So what happens is that basically an API request allows you to retrieve data or retrieve the information from a data source, or you can actually, or to basically send the data. Okay. You need three things to make an API request. That is the method. That is, I'll be talking about the methods soon. And maybe if you are someone who has ever come across methods like get, post, put, delete, so you can actually understand that what do I mean by the term method. So what basically it requires to make a successful or to make an API request, it requires the method, the endpoint URL, and a path. Now these elements basically let the API know what kind of request or what kind of request you are making and where basically to send these particular requests. So now let's talk about each one of them one by one. So first of all, let's talk about methods. Now, when we actually make a request to an API, we specify what we actually want to get out of that interaction. Okay, that means, and how do we do that? We do that with an HTTP method. Now methods, you can say that they are like verbs, or you can say like actions. Okay, so they let the client like Postman decide that which action to use for which particular URL. And that's amazing, right? So basically there are a lot of methods out there, but the ones we'll be seeing today and I'll be covering today are the most commonly used. And these are the get method, the post method, the put method, and the delete method. I'll quickly go through it. I think it is pretty much easy to understand by the terms itself, but get method is basically used to retrieve information. That just means that whenever you actually want to get information out of something, you send a get request, and that is a get HTTP request, and it is a read only. That means we just, you send a request that you just want to search that, hey, what is happening? You just want to search about Citro hacks. So what you will do is that you're not going to update anything on Citro hacks, the server, the main server, but you just want to go and have a look at what is basically inside the content. So that is the read only information. That is the only read-only method in the section of methods. Talking about post method, basically it is used for, as the name suggests, it is about posting an information out there. So yeah, you are out there, you actually want to update or send an information to a server. Then what we use the post method. Talking about the put method, now there is an existing data. Let's say that my like today I had my session at 5. I think in your time zone it was 5 p.m. 5 p.m. PST. So what happens? Let's say that now the speaker, who am I actually change the timing to, like, because of some inconvenience, I change the timing to, let's say, 5:30 p.m. So what will happen? In this case, you are actually required to update information, right? Updated information to the participants that, hey, the session has been postponed or preponed depending on the circumstance. So what you will use to update an information on the server, you will be using the put method. Similarly, talking about the delete method, as the name suggests, it basically is used for deleting an information. I hope everyone is with me till here. So now let's talk about endpoints and paths. Now, basically the endpoint is where your message for an API or your message for the API to carry is basically delivered. So what you can say is that the path is where your request can actually be heard. Or you can say that, yeah, that is where. So path is where your request can be heard, or where you specifically want to make the request in which part. And in this example, if you will see, what I have here is linkedin.com/feed/. Now here, if you will see, the whole URL is divided into two parts. That is, one, you have your endpoint, that is linkedin.com. And the next one which you have is the path. Now what happens here, basically linkedin.com is the endpoint. And what is endpoint? As I said, it is just a channel of communication for the API to understand, or, of course, a domain name you can see, like www.google.com, www.facebook.com, twitter.com, instagram.com. So basically, these are the endpoint that will remain the constant. And what will change? The path can change. Let's say, like here, the path is feed. Now, let's say that you actually want to access my profile. You actually want to go ahead and see what is the, like, you actually want to view the home, like you actually want to view the profile of Aanchal Mishra. So what will happen here is that the things will be remaining the same. The linkedin.com, that is the endpoint, will remain the same. But here, because you actually want to access my profile, so what will happen? The path will change to now what? It will change to my username of LinkedIn, right? That will, in this case, it will be linkedin.com/Mishra Aanchal, and you will be landed up to my LinkedIn profile. And it's that simple. Like it's pretty much that simple. I hope the concept of endpoint and the path is pretty, like it is pretty clear to everyone. If not, don't worry, I'll be going through, like I'll be showing you the live demonstration where you will actually understand that what is an endpoint, what is the whole endpoint URL, and what is basically a path. Now let's move ahead and talk about specifying the detail. Now, when you actually make an API call with a get method, okay, it will usually retrieve everything from the URL address, as we discussed previously. Now, this can actually be pretty overwhelming, but if you will talk about building the request or building your request, you will actually have to understand three important concepts. What are they? First of all, we have parameters. Now, what is a parameters? Basically, it is used to specify or filter out the response so that you can get the specific data which you are aiming at. Okay. In simple words, API, basically what API does is that API parameters are options that can actually be, API parameters are basically an options that can actually be passed with a protocol, or you can say that with an endpoint to influence the response, like whichever specific response you actually want to go ahead with. And now let's talk about authorization. So of course, because this is in 101 session, so we won't be going over the full details of authorization, but yes, in general, authentication lets the API know that what what permission the client has, and determines what data can be actually requested. This typically starts with verifying the developer or the user who is basically using a particular data, or like for which purpose a person is using. And then we have headers. Now, what is headers? Basically, headers is a meta, you can say that a metadata for the request. And what happens here, that some APIs require you actually to send a particular header that's not shown in the URL. Okay, that should be hidden in the that should be hidden there. So unlike how parameters are actually shown, the key value, that is the key value pair. So we will also be understanding that what is key value pair when we'll be defining the one in the Postman. And that is unlike how the parameters are actually shown, the key value pair. And hence it is basically a common practice to actually, send some authorization data like access tokens, or you can say such in the header, right? So now, finally, what we have is the body. Now, there is body. Now, what happens is that the main purpose and basically the body is basically used for post and put methods, which we have seen. Now, why? Because see, when I talk about updating an information, right? Of course, get method will not be requiring any updating information. Why? Because it is just a read-only method. You just need to read that what is present in on a particular server. When I talk about put and post method, what they require you is to update an information, right? Or to add an information there. So of course, you cannot update any information in the air and then you can say that, hey, it has been successfully updated. So what you require is that you need to send a body, right? And of course, what it comprises of, the body comprises of different types of data types. Now there are n number of data types, but the most important which you actually will come across is JSON. Now, what is JSON? Basically, it is JavaScript object notation, and how it looks like is it will basically be having a key value pair. That is, let's say that if the key is name, so it will be corresponding to a particular name. If the key is email ID, so it will be corresponding to a particular email ID. And we'll be seeing that how the body looks like, and we'll also be updating the request. So in we'll be seeing that super soon. Now, let's talk about enough talking about requests. Now let's move on and talk about responses and how we can actually do that. Now, when you actually send an API call, what you get is that you will receive a response. Of course, when you are sending a request, what will happen? Once you send the request, you will receive a response. Now, this basically includes a lot of things. The first and the foremost is the status codes. Now, and you know, of course, there is status code, there is headers, and there is of course the accessing body data, which I was just talking about. Now, when you actually make an API call, you will see the response values on the bottom, and I'll be showing that super soon. Now, for status codes, like if you will talk about 200 OK, 200 OK is the best response that the API work, because it actually means that the API has been successfully, you know, that 200 OK means successful. So it is the best, like it is the best response which you can actually receive. And most common examples of status codes are like you have a lot of things, but you have like you have 201 created, and I think you must have come across the very familiar, you would have been familiar with 404 not found. Even if you are not familiar with the concept of APIs, but you would have surely come across the term 404 not found. Now, talking about, and then what we have is, then we have headers. Now, what we have, like what happens there, I'll be showing that when I'm, you know, like live, you know, like showing it lively, because that will be more relatable to you all, and you will be able to connect more to what are basically headers. Basically, they are also a key value pair, which consists of different keys, which are corresponding to different values depending on what kind of response which you are actually achieving or which you are actually focusing on, and it is totally to do with the response. Now, you can of course you can even edit the headers as per your choice, or you can even update or delete depending on what you actually, and you know, like what you are basically focusing on by receiving the one. And now then we have different types of data types, or different types of ways for accessing the body data in the Postman UI that we'll be seeing super soon. So now let's work, enough of theory knowledge. Now let's move to, and let's work live. And let me share this workspace link quickly with you all so that you can follow along. So let me share it in the chat. And yeah. Okay, so what you need to do is, like, you need to go to this particular URL and you will be showcased. Now, what you will be required, or what you will be required to do is that you will actually be required to have a Postman account to follow along with me. Now, getting a Postman account, because Postman is completely a like free software tool, so you don't have to worry a lot. What you can do is, and of course, we also have a web version of it, so you don't have to necessarily have a desktop version to actually work with Postman. So what you are required to have is, you're directly, when you will be going there, you will be asked to click on launch Postman. And once you click on launch Postman, you are just, you know, you can directly sign up using your Google account, so that you don't even have to remember your password. And then you can follow along with me on you can actually follow along with me via, like during this workshop itself. Let me know once you all are here so that I can actually start. I'll wait for around 2-3 minutes in the chat, for the chat section, and for the participants to give me a yes that yeah, they are here and we can start. It might take around 2 to 3 minutes if you are, like if you are a new user and if you are new to Postman, because you will actually just require to have a sign up, sign up with your Google account, and then you are good to go. So I'll wait for 2 to 3 minutes, and once you're done, please let me know in the comment in the chat section, so that I can actually get started with the same. Okay. Okay. Is it taking a lot of time? Yes, it might take if you are a new user, but yeah, I think it should be okay. I can see someone saying I'm ready. That's awesome. I'll wait for maybe like 2-3 more responses, and then I'll get started with the same. Of course, you can actually follow along even after that, because I'll be speaking. So yeah, you can actually follow along after that. Okay, so now let me get started now. Okay, so first of all, what you need to do is that once you basically arrive on this, if you have ever worked with, or if you have ever worked, or if you have ever come across working with GitHub, you can actually find it a lot more similar. So now, what you need to do first of all is that once you land up here, this is basically a web version of Postman. And here you can see that there are many things which are available here. Like there is section of home, workspaces, reports, explore section. Then you have different things. You have collections, APIs, environments. Of course, these are some of the advanced concepts which you only come across when might be if I'm actually covering a 102 session or 103 session, you will come across this. But for 101 session, it is pretty clear. You will be coming across collections. And once you come here, what you need to do is that you will have to click on basics of APIs. Okay. So I will click on basics of APIs. And once I click here, what you will see a lot of things here. You will see you will see a documentation here, a comment section here, and you will see like a change log and pull request, or yeah, you will see a lot of things. Okay. So now what you need to do here is that first of all, to get started, what you need to do is that you actually need to come here and fork this particular workspace. You can see, or fork this particular collection. So now what you will do is once you will actually click on fork, and then you will come here, you will be directed to change, add in, or basically fork the label. So I usually fork the label because I keep on taking a lot of sessions. So I basically do it as I will take it as 20, because here today it is in India, it is 27 July. So I'm writing 27 July, and I will write, let's say, Citro hacks. Okay, so now this one is there. So it is just for, distinguishing it from the parent, that is the original one, that is basics of APIs. I'm just doing it. We just need to write that to distinguish it from the parent and the child. Now, here when you will come in the workspace section, what you will be required to do is that you will only be shown the option of my workspace, and you can actually follow, because I have been working on Postman like since a very long time. So I will come across a lot of things, but you will only come across one option that will be by default, that is my workspace, if you're a first time user. Now, if I will come across this, now once we are done with this, you have forked your label, you have named it to distinguish it from the parent, and then you have actually added it in my workspace. Then you can click and go forward and click on fork collection. Now, once I click on fork collection, now you will see that it will be creating your copy of the same. It's similar to GitHub, like how you actually clone it in your system, and then how we can actually go ahead and use it or update anything which we actually want to add in that particular project. So now once we have this one, I will come to this one, that is my basics of API to 27 July Citro hacks. Now, what we are required to do is that first of all, let's come here, and here I will come on viewing the documentation. Now, documentation is the gold mine, like gold mine for APIs. So if you're someone who is working across APIs, knowing the documentation is really important, and understanding the same, because what happens is that if you're lost somewhere in between, like even in this particular workshop, if you're lost, what you can do is that you can actually feel free to go back to the documentation, and you can see everything is written pretty systematically here, which can actually tell the step-by-step instruction on all the important details and everything which you actually have to do. So now let me come here and let me say, so I will keep it here, that is our basics of API documentation, and I'll cross this, and now I'll add my first request here. So the first request which I would like to add is, so here if you will come across the basics of API documentation, what we'll be doing today is that we'll be working with the jokes API. Okay, now there are three different parts here. As I was discussing about endpoint URL, right? As I was discussing about endpoint and the part that basically makes a base URL. So here you can see that basically it is the endpoint URL. Now we'll be working a lot with that. And then there are three different paths which you can actually follow along. Like I showed in the example, www.linkedin.com/feed. That means feed was the path, right? So here you have three different options which you can actually follow along. For this particular workshop, I will choose jokes API. Of course, you can go ahead and choose, of course, you can actually choose quotes API or the books API if you are someone who who's a book nerd and you love reading books. You can even choose it after, you can actually, because this documentation will be there with you. So even after the session, you can actually go back and, start from the very top and, start with the books or the quotes APIs as well. So Now what we're going to do is that we are actually going to work with the jokes API. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we are going to actually use the get method to actually get all the jokes which are present there in our system or on the particular server. Okay. And now if let me come here and let me send the, by default, it is a get request, right? So now what I will do here is it is asking me to put a URL here. So what is the URL here? I am required to put the endpoint URL here. Now, where is the endpoint URL? It is in the documentation. So I will first of all copy this, Control C. I'll come back here and I will put it as Control V. And here you can see that now I have added my path. So here what I will do, okay. I may have copied everything. Let me again copy the same. Okay. Let me again come here and let me copy the same. Let me copy my endpoint URL and let me come back here and add it here. And now here what I will do is after this one, I will come here and which API which we are going to use? We are going to use the jokes API. So what I will do is I will add /joke in front of that. So I will put a forward, there is already a /. Now I will put joke. Okay, and now I'm going to send the request. So now let's see, and this is a response section here. You can see. So basically, this looks like this basically is a request section where you will be sending or where you will be making different requests. And here, similarly, what you will actually come here is that basically this will be a response section. Okay, let me see. The request has been blocked because it is an insecure. Okay. That request. Yeah. Now let me send the request. Yeah. So now what you will see here, so before even moving to that, what I will show you, I will quickly show you a demonstration on how basically, as I was telling you, right, I will show you that how Google works as an API. So now what I will do, I will quickly write here google.com and let's see that I will hit the send button. Now this is basically a method, like whichever method you want to use, but right now because we actually want to read the data, so we are going to use a get method. And this is a send button, which is basically used to send the request. So now I will click on sending the request. And now let's see that what we get after sending the request. Oh, I see a lot of HTML here. And that is awesome. So what we are seeing here is a pretty version of the code which is present there. So you can see that this is what it is basically returning when I'm searching for, when I'm writing google.com. Now there are different versions of the body, like as I was discussing about body. So there are different versions. Like this is a pretty version, and like pretty, it will basically the body will basically comprise of HTML or you can say JSON if you're actually working with REST APIs. Now here, if you will see, there is a raw section, but what we are interested in looking at is a preview of how basically it looks like. So if I click on preview, you can see here that it basically looks like it basically looks like, or it is basically a preview of Google homepage, right? And ignore this one, that is, it is just a random CSS breaking down. So yeah, you don't have, but yeah, it works 100%. It works 100%. So now what we do on Google, we search, right? We don't just see the homepage and like we are happy that, hey, like, yeah, this is the search engine. So now what I will do is that in order to search, what we actually require to do is that we basically are required to change it, or, we are basically required to redefine the request which we are actually sending. So now what I'll be doing here is I'll be using it, or I'll be defining, or I'll be redefining my request using the query parameters, which I was discussing, which we have discussed right now. So in the key section, I will randomly write like you can say an alphabet, and then in the value I will write, you can write any value which you want to actually get from Google, but right now I'm writing Postman here. Now once you click on, and now if I will click on Postman, now you can see this, the request changing, the request URLs, the endpoint URL changing on its own using the query, depending on the, according to the query parameter which I have added. So here you can see, and now let me click on send button. Now when I hit send button, what you see here, oh, I see Postman written on the search box, but that's not what we get when we actually search for like anything, right? What we get is that we get the response page, right? So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to come back here and let's see that what we actually need to do. when I was talking about endpoint and path, if you remember, it is very important to specify the path as well in order to understand, or in order to say or define that where we actually want to land up, right? And that will be, and we have not defined that. If you will see here, we have just written google.com, that is our domain, but where is our path? We have not defined the path. And what we want to do here is that we want to search. So what I will do here for that is I will come after google.com. Let me zoom in, put a forward slash, and I will put here, search, and now let me hit the send button. And now let's see what we get. Oh, and now you see that you get the response page of the result section of when you actually search for Postman out there. Is it pretty simple? Like, I hope it is pretty simple. It is very, it is very, very simple to understand how the whole thing happens. You might also wonder, like, if you're actually going there, and if you will actually search for other, so in case you actually get any, like you just get random links out there, like when you look, your friends sending you random links out there. So what you can do is that you can directly copy that link, put it here, and see what basically is happening behind the scene. Okay, and you can actually get the whole information. Like here, if I will talk about headers, you can see that what are the different types of key value pair which are being used. Now I have not added any header here, right? You can see that Postman automatically assigns some headers and so automatically assign some key value pair depending on the request which we are making here. Like, and of course, if you want to know more about these headers, what you can do is that you can directly go to this one and you can click on the eye icon, and you can see that what are these headers all about. And you will also see different section in the response section. Like we have headers, we have test results. You will see a status 200 okay. And what does that mean? Status 200 okay simply means that yes, now everything is fine, and yeah, your request has been successful. Similarly, there is a time section. It is nothing to worry about. It is just that how much time it took for the response to retrieve the response. And then we have the size section, that is the response size, the size of the response which we have received. And then we also have a section of save response. That simply means that you can even save a response to edit or review it for later. Okay, I hope this example is clear to everyone. Now let me cross this and let's move forward with, don't save. Okay, awesome. So now let's move back to this one. So here what you saw is that I directly copied this endpoint URL. And after copying this endpoint URL, what I did was I actually added a path here that was the jokes API. And when I send this, you can see here in the response section what we get. It is ID2, author NA, not defined. And the joke is, who is a programmer? A programmer is a machine who turns coffee into code. That is pretty awesome. So now what you will see is that because we are just receiving the data, right? And if you will actually click send 2-3 times, you will actually be receiving different jokes here. So here, if you will see the next one, that is ID3, the joke is first rule of programming. If it works, don't touch it. That is pretty overwhelming, and that is, I hope everyone can relate with it. All the programmers in the house can relate with that. Now what we need to do is this is about getting, getting all the data which is present here in our particular workspace on a particular server. Now let's move ahead and save this request. Now, once we save this request, what we will do is I will add another request, and I will add the next request to get a particular book, or like to search for a particular joke. You can say search a joke. And how you can do that? Of course, we don't know that, right? So what we will do is that we will go back to the documentation and see that how we can actually use that. So we can see that, yeah, we have done this one to get a random joke. We have added this particular syntax in the URL, and then we were receiving the random joke. Talk about to get a specific joke. What we can do is that we can actually go ahead and add it here, like to get a specific joke, /joke/ and the ID of the joke. So let me come here. And now what I will do, I will again add this URL here, because this will be common. So I'll add this URL here, Control C. And you will also get an option of, like if you will come here, you will see the option of set as variable. Now, this is one of the best practices which you can do so that you don't have to write the same thing again and again. What you can do is that you can click on set variable, you can click on set as a new variable. And now here, set as a variable, set as a new variable. And here I will put the name as, let's say, base URL. base URL. And here I will select a scope, that is the collection, because I only want to focus on, I will only focus on this particular name when we are working with this particular collection. So I'm choosing this particular collection, and now I will set the variable. Now, once I set the variable, you can see here, like here, you will be getting base URL, and it automatically means that, yeah, this is our particular, this is the initial, the base URL consists of the endpoint URL, right? So now what I will do is, now here what we will do is we have this one, and now after that I will put a forward slash, I will put a colon, and I will put ID, okay? And in this ID, once you will actually open this ID, you will see one thing which will be opening here, that is the path variable also. So before we only had a query parameter, and now it has also opened the path variable. Now here, if you will come ahead and it will show the key ID, and now I will add a random letter here. So let's say I will add the value of 3, and let's see what this particular value, which joke this particular, which joke this particular ID holds. I'll click the send button, and now if I will come across the response section, what you can see is that basically ID 3, the joke is first rule of programming. If it works, don't touch it. How awesome is that? So basically you can even search for a particular, search for whichever information or a specific information which you actually want to focus on. And that's how you can actually retrieve the specific information out of there from a request. Now, what we will do before moving ahead, we will save this particular request and then we'll move ahead with the same. So now let's move with the next request, which I'm going to do. And that will be adding a particular joke here, adding our own particular joke. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is again, add a request and then I'll join in here. Now here, what I will do is again, what was our URL? What was basically our endpoint URL? That was base URL, right? We name it as base URL. And now what I will do is, because I want to add an information here, which request we will be using. Any idea about which request we'll be using? Any answer which I can expect from the participants here? We want to add something here to the existing information. So which response we will be using? Yes, come on fast. We talked about 4 requests, right? We were talking about get request, we were talking about post request, we were talking about put request, and we were also talking about delete request. So what do you think out of these 4, which request is basically required to actually go ahead and post the, like updated information? I can get the answer that, yeah. Okay, you are, okay, I am really sorry, but I am not sure that, yeah, I received the response that your URL is wrong. Yeah, I got it. Post method. This URL should be working. I am not.
If wants you to buy a car, what will you do?
Hey, really, could you repeat? I could not hear you. Sorry.
Oh, of course you do. $5 million. I want to be a millionaire one day. Right. I'm gonna die before I become a millionaire. Rich. So I'm gonna shop for cars.
Okay, maybe I think someone has unmuted. Okay, no worries. I am sure that this URL should be working, but if it is not working, let me do one thing. I'll come here. Let me come here and let me copy this URL. Let me add this one then. It should be working with, as in, let me add this URL in the chat section. Okay. By the way, Dhan is right that, yeah, we will be using the post method. That's awesome. That means I can assure that, yeah, you all are following along till here. Okay. So now let's come here. And what I will do is I will click on this get request and I will click on post, right? I will click on post. Now what I will do is that once I am done with this particular thing, now I want to add a request, or I want to basically add something, right? So I will name this request. I will also edit this one and I will say add a joke. I will name this request as add a joke. So now what I will do is I will again come, because I am not sure of like what joke I can add. Like I cannot actually think of any joke as of now, but yeah, go ahead. And if you actually have you basically have any joke out there, so basically you can just go ahead and put in that joke in the body. And now here, if you will see to send a new joke, what you will require is you will be basically working with the body of here, like body of this particular request. So here, if you will see the section of body, right? And once you will click here, body, in the body section, now what you will see here is that you will get different options. Now what you need to do is that after selecting body, you need to click on raw. Once you click on raw, you need to go ahead and click on JSON, okay? And then we will be putting the code which we actually want to put in there. And from where we'll get the syntax, of course, you don't know the syntax. So what we will, I'm assuming, of course, you don't know the syntax. So what we'll do here, we'll go back to the documentation and we'll directly copy the syntax of how we are going to add a particular joke. Now here, if you will come, you will see here that this is your particular syntax. You can see ID1, author, we have our student program community, student community manager of student like of Postman, and then the jokes which is written, the joke which is written here, that is bugs are features, and the source is the il.dev. Now here what you can do is you can go ahead and change it with your specific name. So I'm adding Aanchal Mishra here, and I cannot actually think of a joke as of now, but again, please go ahead and add whichever joke you want to add. Now here, if you will send this one, and I will write, let's say, Aanchal.def. Okay. And now you can, of course, source whichever joke you are referring. You just have to add that particular, you just have to add that particular URL, or you can actually just add a source. And now I will hit the send button. Now let's see what is happening here. In the response, what we get is that the joke with ID1 already exists. Add a new ID. What does that mean? That basically the joke with ID1 already exists. So you will have to add a new ID. That is, let me add 44, a random one. And now let me hit send button. Now, once you add a hit and once you hit the send button, now you can see ID 44, and then you have the response section here. That is ID 44. You can see the status code here. What is the status code? It is status 201 created. What does that mean? That any information which you needed to be updated on the server has been successfully updated. So here you will see ID 44, author is Aanchal Mishra, bugs are features, and the source is Aanchal.dev. You can go ahead and follow along with the same, and it will be pretty easy for you to change it as per your syntax, as per the syntax which is provided in the documentation. And now if we will come back here in searching a joke, now if I will put a section here, like I will put 44, let's see what I get. And I get my joke here. That means that yes, my joke has been successfully updated, and yeah, it is right now there in the server. Now let's move to the last request for today, and that is going to be the delete request. So now I'll come back here again, and I will click on this one. I will again click on add a request, and now I will click on delete a book. Okay. So we are going to delete the book which we have created just now, which we have added just now. So here I will come here, and now I will talk about again add the URL, base URL. And now in this section, which is the request which you are going to use, which is the request method which we will be using. The comments, let me see the chat section. Yes, awesome. We are awesome, Dhan. I see Dhan is very interactive in the session. Okay, that is awesome. Maybe I have something for you after the session. So yeah. Now what we're going to do is that we are going to use the delete method for this particular method. And now what we're going to do is that because we know that which was our URL, right? The ID was #:, I will use ID, and that was ID here, right? So once I write here, you will be able to see that path variable. And now here I will add, what was my ID? My ID was 44, right? So I will click on 44, and now I will hit the send button. And now you can see what has happened here. What is the response which we are getting? Joke with ID 44 is deleted. Now, how do we assure that? Like I don't trust that. Okay. So here we, look here, we actually search for this one, right? And now if you will again click on send button, you should be getting 404 not found, right? And yeah, that's what we get. Here you can see the status code, that is 404 not found. That means our request has been successfully updated and we have received the correct response out of there. So that was how we could actually, that was the, quick demonstration on how you can actually use the most four important HTTP methods. That was get method, post method, and then we also work with delete method, right? Get, post, and delete method. We actually work with these. So now what we are going to do is that let me go back here and let me go back to my presentation, and let's get started. Okay, so now I will just show you, I'll just give you a quick recap on what all we actually do, like what all we have basically done. So we actually went over how to basically set up an API request, and we also send it and how we can actually send them via Postman. Now let's do a quick recap of what all we actually covered during this session and like what all we have just seen right now. So first of all, we learned about the different methods, right? We learned about what all methods we learned about. Can someone just add in the comment section what all were the 4 methods which we actually just now we actually saw the demonstration of? It might take a little time to write in, but yeah, it is pretty simple, right? I am hoping that all of you who have attended the session must have at least this particular idea that what all methods we actually use for this particular session. I'll not wait for the comment section. Maybe, you can just go ahead and write it. But yeah, the 4 major methods which we used were get method, we use the post method, we also use the put method, and we also use the delete method, right? And now, as we have discussed, and then we actually discussed about the addresses, that was, that is our endpoint URL, which is a combination of the path and the endpoint, and like which can actually have multiple paths and a lot more than that. We also discussed about parameters. There are 2 different types of parameters. One was our query parameters and one was our path parameter. That was query parameter was in the example which we saw in google.com domain. We saw that we actually added a key value pair in the query parameter section. There we got the response that yeah, there is key value pair. I added a random alphabet there, and in the value I added post actually. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead. Now, yeah, so that was what we did in the parameter section. And then we also studied about authorization in our request. In the recent demo, what we saw 3 different types of authorization. One was we had 200 status code, we had 201 status code, and we also got 404 not found status code, right? And then we also studied about body data. That was defining and seeing the different types of data types. That was HTML and JSON. We worked with HTML. That was to see like when we actually search for the google.com domain. So we actually see the HTML format for the same. And when we were actually working with the jokes API, we came across the JSON format. That was, when we were actually updating the joke on the server. Now coming to the end of the workshop, if you like this workshop, and if you are now this workshop left you enough curious about what are the different what are the more possibilities with APIs and what all you can do as a student. So what you can do is that you can actually continue your learning of APIs as a student expert and what you can do is that basically student expert certification actually verifies or indicates that you are actually a proficient person who has the essential skills involved in building and testing API requests in Postman, and that can be done, that is basically including sending sophisticated requests in Postman. You can also, it also is a proof that you can also edit, you are actually, you are capable of editing documentation for a collection, writing basic test scripts, running collection, passing data between requests, and a lot more. And yes, if you actually continue, once you actually come in the league, that is, once you actually join the program, the Postman student program as a Postman student expert, you will also get an opportunity to become a Postman student leader in your community or in your local community. And you can basically become the leader in your campus also, like I am doing the same. And now, so it is pretty simple how you can apply for the same. I will add in this particular link in the chat section so that if in case you want to apply for the same, so you can directly go ahead, and I'll copy this and I'll add it in the chat section. So let me quickly add it here. Okay.
Hi, Aanchal. Sorry to interrupt, but we're running a bit over time. So
yeah, I am.
Let's wrap this up.
Yes, I'm done. Okay, fine. So yeah, that was it from my side. And yeah, of course, you can continue your learning with that. And of course, the resources I will actually add in, and I may provide the slides with Relay so that she can actually share it with the participants. And yeah, we are good to go. So yeah, thank you for joining in. And if you have a question, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll be more than happy to come across, or maybe, like solve any queries which you have in general. Maybe if you have a query in joining a Postmaster Expert program, you're facing any difficulty in joining the training section as well, what you can do is that you can actually go ahead and you can, just follow along. Or one more thing which you can do is that you can basically let me share the Discord section or Discord community link for our like of Postmaster program, so that in case if you actually face any problem while applying for Postmaster Expert program, you can actually join this Discord link. And what you can do is that you will be able to, I'll be more than happy, and there are a lot of students out there, student leaders out there, who will be able to help you out with any doubts if you have in case. So yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you for having me here, really.
All right, thank you. So our next workshop is an Android development workshop. So I'm actually gonna end